Morning, everyone. My name is Brendan Harrison, and I'll be discussing the case on e-waste, an important environmental and health issue found on page 392 in the textbook. So the main subject regarding this case is electronic waste, also informally known as e-waste. In short, e-waste is any electronic equipment that is energized with a battery or plug nearing the end of its useful life. This includes a wide spectrum of devices such as microwaves, shavers, and then the entire umbrella of IT devices that meet this definition, such as personal computers, switches, mobile devices, and so forth. According to the United Nations Environmental Program on their website, 20 to 50 million tons of e-waste are produced annually, and only around 20% of this is formally recycled. Now, the toxic and chemical substances produced from e-waste create a significant problem to the lives of those in developing nations where this waste is discarded. Just one computer alone contains hundreds of chemicals, including lead and mercury. Some examples of health-related conditions that can spawn from this waste include, but are not limited to, respiratory ailments, lead poisoning, and multiple forms of cancer. Now, there is a large amount of money that's lost by dumping e-waste. Companies and countries, if they adhere to strict recycling practices, can earn more than $62.5 billion from the material that can be scrapped from this waste, such as gold, copper, and silver. On this slide, I provided a bar chart that was created in a study by the International Solid Waste Association. In short, the chart anticipates how the annual number of metric tons produced from e-waste is increasing each year and is expected to surpass 50 million by 2020. What is more disturbing is how the amount of e-waste per person is increasing as well. This makes a lot of sense since almost all of us have several or more devices that are replaced every few years or so, such as computers, mobile devices, entertainment systems, and so forth. The rising trends in IoT devices, machine learning, and artificial intelligence are also possible contributors to these increasing rates, since more technologies and equipment are being manufactured for these fields. Currently, there are no federal laws to govern displacement and recycling of e-waste. The case discusses how a federal law called the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act gives the Environmental and Protection Agency the authority to enforce requirements, corrective cleanup, and other actions on organizations regarding the disposal of hazardous waste. However, this law does not cover e-waste in particular. Therefore, companies are legally permitted to transfer e-waste to developing countries if they get informed consent to do so from the country importing the waste. To make matters worse, the U.S. is not an official party member of the Basel Convention. The Basel Convention is an international treaty designed to reduce movement of e-waste between nations and specifically prohibit its transfer from developed to developing nations. While the U.S. signed this treaty, they haven't been ratified, which means they are free to transfer e-waste to nations that are not ratified members of the convention. Now, in order to pave the way for safe e-waste recycling, Dell partnered with Goodwill in 2004 to form Dell Reconnect, with the goal to resell, refurbish, and recycle e-waste that is dropped off at any participating Goodwill location. Since 2007, Dell has collected more than 6.6 million tons of e-waste through this program, and has also funded Goodwill's nonprofit work, which is focused on skills training and job creation. In 2009, Dell strengthened their e-waste practices by banning the export of e-waste to developing nations by its employees and business partners. While Dell's efforts were made to emphasize social and environmental responsibility, a 2-year study by the Basel Action Network revealed how discarded equipment is still being exported to developing nations. So the ethical dilemma in this case is, should U.S. corporations be held accountable for e-waste recycling practices? To me, they should be held accountable. As everyone saw earlier, there are countries where e-waste is significantly impacting the lives of those in developing nations by introducing toxic materials that can create various diseases. If companies are carelessly dumping equipment overseas, not only are they damaging the lives of those who are deeply impoverished, but they are also hurting U.S. foreign relations. Also, a huge framework that is popular in the boardrooms of corporations today for addressing ethical behavior is the triple bottom line. Ultimately, this model specifies which performance areas companies should improve in order to reap the most benefits and achieve the highest business value. One of those areas, in this case planet, strictly obligates corporations to reduce their ecological footprint by creating sustainable business practices. If corporations adopted this model and used Dell as an example for e-waste recycling, then they will produce a win-win situation for everyone because it would reduce the environmental impact e-waste has on developing nations, and corporations will be able to collect a lot of the resources, such as gold and copper, that are present in e-waste. So the first discussion question is, what specific actions should Dell and Goodwill take to strengthen the Reconnect program, and how can Dell monitor the large number of participants, including employees and business partners, at over 2,000 Goodwill locations to ensure that the program functions as intended? Regarding the program, Dell and Reconnect can draft a memo to all employees, business partners, and locations setting clear expectations regulating how e-waste should be processed, whether it's resold, recycled, or refurbished. This memo will also contain clear guidelines for managers and supervisors for conducting and enforcing the Reconnect program, because it seems as if middle and lower management haven't embraced the program as much as upper management. Now, how Dell can monitor the large number of participants is by hiring consulting managers to assess how diligently the managers and supervisors of these locations are processing e-waste. Another way is by taking the Basal Action Network as an inspiration and install GPS devices into the equipment to determine which locations continue to improperly discard equipment. The second question is, why do you think the United States, the largest generator of e-waste worldwide, is the only industrialized nation that has not yet ratified the Basel Convention? Ultimately, the United States hasn't ratified the convention because the events that followed the convention signing placed the agreement in legislative limbo. When President George H.W. Bush signed the convention and sent it to the Senate, the treaty was deemed non-self-executing because additional legislation had to be enacted to assign implementation authority to the existing domestic system governing hazardous waste in the United States, in this case the EPA. In short, the Bush administration told Congress that it would not ratify the convention until it placed more legislation that would grant the EPA the powers to make this convention judicially enforceable in the United States. Unfortunately, Congress failed to provide the necessary legislation, and the treaty was set aside as other events were unfolding that attracted Congress's attention, such as the 52nd presidential election. The third question is, do research to learn of any proposed or pending legislation intended to close some of the gaps in current federal law. Write a brief summary of your findings. In my research, I did find 2 bills that were proposed to fill the gaps by the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act. The first was called the Responsible Electronics Recycling Act. It was introduced in a Congress session back in 2013, but has been stuck within a House subcommittee ever since. The second is the Secure E-Waste Export and Recycling Act, which was introduced back in June of 2019. This bill is still being summarized by Congress and has been referred to the House Subcommittee on Foreign Affairs on June 27, 2019 for a decision and hasn't progressed since. And that concludes my case study on e-waste. Here are my references, and thank you everyone for watching.